host, Julia Williams, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Sarah Cook, the Director of We Do HR, and a sterling partner. Now, Sarah is a true powerhouse when it comes to all things HR. She has a wealth of experience and knowledge that can match few. Now, what Sarah doesn't know about HR really isn't worth knowing, but anyway. So today we're really going to be delving into the changes now that we've got a new Labour government. What does that mean for business owners, and what will be the impact to the workforce? So, hi Sarah, nice to have you here.
Hi Julia, thank you for that introduction.
So Sarah, the key thing is we've got a new Labour government, and we know that there are new legislations and new laws. So can you tell me, what are the key policies now that we need to be aware of?
Okay, so no changes into legislation as yet, but a lot coming up, and it feels as though, it's something that the government want to build momentum with and bring through quite quickly. So some of the things that I think will affect SME businesses in particular are the changes to 0 hours contracts, for example, which is under the Predictable Terms and Conditions Act of 2023. We think this is going to come in September, October time. So, you'll remember from my previous podcasts that employment legislation changes in October and April most years, but there has been a September date sort of bandied around for this one as well. And what this is going to mean is that if you are on a 0 hours contract, but you regularly work and a certain number of hours, you will need to be given a contract for that number of hours. So you need to be guaranteed the average number of hours that you work. And the average is going to be worked out over a 12-week period. So for employers, what this means is if you do have people working on 0 hours contracts, quite quickly now, you are going to need to look at how many hours they work on average over this 12-week period, and you're going to potentially need to offer them a contract for that number of hours. The original idea of 0 hours contracts was this kind of mutually beneficial, I'm an employer, I've got some shifts available, would you like to work them? And you say, do that one, but I don't want to do that one, or I'll do this one, but I'm not doing that one. That clashes with my school pickup or my, tennis lesson or, whatever it is. But what's happened is that employers have said, 0 hours contracts. I don't need to guarantee anybody some hours. So I'll just have everybody on 0 hours, and then I can pick and choose who works when. And I don't then have to extend benefits that I might have to extend to people that I guarantee hours to, and maybe I don't get caught up in statutory payments and things like that. So this will increase workers' rights because they'll be able to have a guaranteed hours, but it will also potentially be helpful for employers because you'll be able to see what patterns you have been giving and that people have been taking. And it might mean that, you actually get more stability in your workforce because people will be saying, if I know I'm going to be working 15 hours a week, that's fine, I'll take the job.
So how does that really affect? I'm just thinking of, when you've got restaurants, that sort of thing, and they're offered 0 hours. Sometimes it's really quiet, sometimes it gets busy. If it's over a 12-week period, how does that affect businesses like that?
And that's a really good question. And especially if you, like you say, over the summer. So if it's coming in September, for example, one of the dates we've seen is the 18th of September. So 12 weeks before that is right the way across the summer. So if you've had, students potentially in hospitality working through the summer 30, 35, 40 hours a week, do you then have to offer them a contract for 40 hours going through for the rest of the year? And at the moment, we don't know the ins and outs of that. We don't know when the 12-week period is going to be. It says over a 12-week reference period, but it doesn't say the previous 12 weeks as the reference period. But also as well, my kids are students. So, if I was to offer them because they'd worked 37 and a half hours all through the summer, and I was to say, right, so it's 37 and a half hours then for the rest of the year, they would go, no, thank you very much. We've got lectures to go to and things like that. So we don't want to work those hours. So, there's an element of, again, talking, and I'm always saying this, aren't I? Talk to people. When you talk to people, you find out what they want, and you can say what you want, and you can come to an agreement that suits everybody and is within the law, rather than starting from the law says. Have a conversation, see what people think, what they want to do. If I've just worked 30 hours a week over the last 2 months for you because you were busy and the shifts were there, and maybe I'm just about to go on my summer holiday, so I want a bit of extra cash for the holiday. It doesn't mean that when you say to me, okay, well, you've averaged 30 hours, so I'm offering you a contract for 30 hours, that I'm going to say, yeah, I want those 30 hours. I might say to you, actually, do you think, we could make that 20 hours? And as an employer, you might go, oh, thank God for that, because I can't really afford to give you 30 hours.
That makes sense. Do you feel though with the new legislations that have come in, that it's actually helped to strengthen workers' rights then and protect them?
Yeah, and I think this is what it's badged as, is a better deal for working people. So that's definitely the intention, and on the whole, happy workforce is a productive workforce. Is a profitable workforce. So there's good work, more rights for workers, but it does mean, as employers, we have very few rights enshrined in law. And I'm always saying, you've got the rights that you give yourself in your documentation, your contracts, your handbooks, your policies and procedures. And if you don't keep on top of those and keep those up to date, if there is a dispute, you're on the back foot already because you haven't got up to date documentation. And B, you are not making the most of your opportunity to engage, motivate, and retain and attract top talent. So giving workers a good deal, it's also can be an opportunity for organisations to get a good deal as well. And it's just about the way you look at these things. If you look at it with a negative mindset, then you're going to get a negative result. If you try to look at it from, well, what's the positive for me and my business out of this legislation, then you're more likely to get a positive result out of it.
In terms of training and development, I hear that there's going to be changes in the apprenticeship. So what does that mean, and what's happening?
So we understand that there is going to be a complete kind of like revamp of the employer's apprenticeship levy and the way in which that works. So we don't know what's going to happen with it yet, but at the moment, if you have a wage bill of over a certain amount, then you have to pay so much money into an apprenticeship levy. What is clear is that there are thousands of businesses paying into the apprenticeship levy and not leveraging the money that they've paid. So they are not using that money to get training and development for their people. So they're missing a trick because they're paying this money, and they could be getting free training for people, which isn't happening. So I think there's going to be a revamp of that. It's going to try and make it easier for organisations to access the levy, so access the money that they've paid. It's going to try and make it easier for them to access training for their people as well. A lot of times this training is, it's online, it can be delivered, wherever you are based. So if you've got, home-based or hybrid working people, it can be delivered to them, online. Like I say, we in the We Do group, we've got several people doing leadership level 7 qualification, which is equivalent to it's a master's level qualification. It takes about 18 months, and we found a really great training provider, and the people that are doing the course, I speak to them, they are loving the course. They're finding it really helpful. They're learning a lot from it. So I think if they're revamping this and it's making it easier for employers to access, then I think that can only be a good thing. And there are some really great training providers out there. There are also some not so great training providers out there. So it's worth, as an organisation, doing your research, understanding, how it's going to work, getting some testimonials, speaking to, lots of different training providers, and also speaking to your people who are going to be doing the training to work out what's best for them, how they best learn, and the sorts of things that they want to do. But I think that can only be a good thing.
Do you think some businesses haven't accessed the training because they simply don't know about it? I mean, do you feel the information has been
No,
filtered
I
down
don't think
to
the
business?
information is filtered down very well. It's trying to set yourself up on the portal and access the information is a faff. And it's all whoever's doing it, it's not, they're normally doing it as well as everything else that they do. It's complicated. You need various bits of information that seem to come from all four corners of the earth, and where I get that bit from, and where do I get that bit from, and how do I. So yeah, it's not easy to set yourself up on it. It's not easy to use it. And I can, imagine a lot of people going, it's not worth the effort to access the money. So hopefully they make the point, the point of getting to accessing the money, less hoops to jump through. Although I wouldn't hold my breath. These things are always complicated, but it's definitely worth getting some advice and getting some help to work through that, because it can be a great source of really good training for your people.
Definitely. Now, I've got to ask you the big question because I was out and about and I heard a few business leaders discussing the minimum wage. Now, they were concerned that the minimum wage had increased and they were worried about the impact on their businesses. Could they afford it? Would that mean then they need to increase the wage of their other workers that weren't on minimum wage? So, can you share or on the whole
Yeah, so the
issue?
minimum wage went up quite significantly in April of this year. It went up from £10 something to 11.44. But what they also did was there was a band where anyone aged 21 to, or yeah, 21 up to 23, previously there was a lower minimum wage for them. So they scrapped that band. So now everyone aged 21 and over has to be paid £11.44 an hour. Now, the Labour government is saying that they want to increase the minimum wage so it's a living wage. So that will be more increases. And yeah, totally get what, the conversation you overheard. If you've got somebody who, say prior to this April when it went up, you might have had people coming in, new people, and you're starting them on the minimum wage, which is £10 something, and you might have some people on 11 or 11.50 or something like that, and there is a significant difference. So you can point to, these are my new people, these are my experienced people. But if you've suddenly got to put everybody up to 11.44, then the gap between your new people and your experienced people narrows. If that 11.44 goes up to £12 an hour, then how do you afford that? And there's an element of thinking about how you're going to budget for it. And I was having this conversation a few weeks ago, actually, and I was remembering, so it's not minimum wage, but I was remembering when I worked for a business in-house as HR director, and we had about 800 people working for us, and everybody from a certain level had private medical cover, and then from a more senior level you had medical cover, private medical cover for your family, and then there was about I know, half the workforce, maybe more than half the workforce that weren't eligible for private medical cover. As part of a review of our benefits, we decided to bring in private medical cover, single cover for everybody in the organisation. Now, you would think, wouldn't you, that that would be a good thing and that everybody would be like, wow, that's brilliant, you know. But there are a group of people who currently got private medical cover just for themselves, who were saying that they were worse off because these new benefits hadn't benefited them and it had put everybody else on the same level as them. And whilst I got the logic of what they were saying, I suppose, I was, well, you're not worse off. You are the same, but you know, other people are now better off. So there's a bit of a, you know, this is kind of a selfish attitude to say, because those people now better off, I need to be better off as well. So you've got to do something for me. I understand the thinking. And so as an employer, it's about, well, how are you going to communicate that then? So if you have got people who will think that, what do you want to do about it? Because you could start by tackling it head on and saying, actually, you are not worse off. You are the same off, but the law has changed and now I need to pay these people, you know, the new people coming in have to be paid this money. There's nothing I can do about it. The law has changed. But you are still more experienced. You are still, you know, my trusted people. You are still maybe the people that are going to get, you know, if there's a bonus system, maybe you look at whether there's a lead up to when you can earn a bonus. So your experienced people get the same hourly rate, but they are the people who are entitled to a bonus if certain targets are hit. Or when you're looking at this, you factor in into your budgeting. Okay, so if the minimum wage goes up to £12 an hour, I'm going to bring new people in on £12 an hour, but I'm going to budget for my existing people to go to £12 and 5 pence or £12.10. And is that something, you know, as an employer, is that something you can do? Can you budget for that? Or is there a benefit that you can bring in for people, you know, once they've hit 12 months service, 2 years service, maybe, that the people are earning, you know, who are going to complain about their hourly rate. Yeah, but you're getting this and you get this. Yeah, maybe you could look at holiday entitlement. Maybe you could look at medical cover, cash plan, death in service. You could bring in some benefits that might, you know, chip in once people have got a bit more length of service, which makes them feel like they are more senior or more, you know, they're getting more without having to increase your annual salary bill.
I think it's a real issue, I think, amongst businesses and concern. I can see that. But from what you're saying, really, it's how you tackle it and having the mindset. Just listening to you, it doesn't have to be a pay increase for the others, it could be some sort of benefit. So it's the way you look at it. I think, from my perspective, it's
Yeah,
worrying for the
yeah,
businesses that can't afford it. And I suppose it's how do they work out a strategy to overcome it
yeah,
and still
yeah.
run their business effectively. In your opinion, though, I mean, how can you see the future under this government in terms of salary trends and just the impact on the
I mean,
work?
I think there will be a big impact on the workplace, and I think it's um, yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? When everything's going well, we don't necessarily look at where we need to tighten things up and how we could be doing things better. So I think, you know, to a certain extent, the focus on this gives us an opportunity as business owners to say, okay, well, you know, this is quite a lot. This is quite big. I need to really look at what do I need here? What are my key roles? What's absolutely critical that I have? What could I manage without? Where can I build in flexibility? So if you've got, you know, 5 people working full time, and you need to bring in more pairs of hands, for example, but do you need those pairs of hands full time? You know, is this, do you need to look at whether you need those existing 5 people full time? Is there some flexibility you can get? Are there people in those existing group that would prefer to have more flexibility? So maybe you can look at that. It's an opportunity to really focus in on how you are organized with people, what you are paying, what your risks are, what your opportunities are, and whether what you're doing at the moment needs a restructure, or whether you carry on in the same way. And I think, for me, that's the thing is okay, there's quite a lot coming up, there's quite a lot of change. What's the impact? What do I need to do? And actually, is this an opportunity to just have a look at everything and say, okay, maybe we need to be better at benefits, maybe we need to be better at pay. Where do we want to be? Are we saying we want to be in the top half of payers for our industry or the sector that we're in? Or are we saying, no, we don't, we don't want to, we can't afford to be in. So have you got a policy around pay? And as an HR director in slightly larger than SME organizations, but not much, 800 people, 500 people, I have written pay policies which say, this is how we approach pay in this organization. And I've written ones that say we aspire to be a top quartile payer. And I've written ones that say, we do not aspire, we aspire to pay 20% over the minimum, and this is the culture that we'll build. This is the context of that decision. We are a purpose-led business, so although we don't pay loads, maybe we're a charity, maybe we do a lot of charitable work, maybe the purpose of what we're delivering or the opportunity of what we're delivering is really great. So maybe we say, we don't aspire to be a high payer, but what we will do is you come in and work for us, we will give you massive opportunity in this area, in this area, in this area. And then you might go after 2 or 3 years and, then you can, if you want to earn the big bucks, we equipped you with the skills and the experience to go on and do that. So there's lots of different ways of looking at things. And once again, it comes down to what type of organization do you want to be? What is the culture that you are building? And what do you understand are the benefits that you can bring to somebody coming to work in your organization?
With legislations and laws changing, is there any support for businesses? I mean, I'm thinking a lot of businesses probably are not aware of these changes. So
Well, so
where
yeah,
can
you
they
can
get
come to
support
someone
to
like
do
us, and get some outsourced HR support. And I would say, that as the legislation increases and increases and increases, that will become more important to more businesses. There's a lot there to keep on top of. And if you don't have somebody doing it for you, unfortunately, ignorance is not a defense. So, if you do get pulled up on it, you can't say, well, I didn't know. So I think, yeah, outsourcing and talking to someone like us, and again, planning, budgeting for having some support there is a good idea. But I would say that, wouldn't I? There are free resources. ACAS primarily is there for employees, but there is a lot of help and support that on their website that you can get for employers. In terms of health and safety executive, their website is really helpful. But you have to spend the time and be prepared to look through it yourself. And it's that balance between, have I got the time and the inclination to do that, as opposed to, or would it be easier just to employ an expert to do it for me? And there is going to be a body, under all these employment legislation changes, there is going to be a body that will, it's being lauded as they will police people, making sure that they are doing the right thing, but presumably that they will also provide advice to employers who do want to do the right thing. They won't just be there to tell you when you've got it wrong and fine you. They'll also be there to, help and advise you as well. But again, we don't know what that's going to look like.
as a final point point, Sarah? Is there anything else that we should be aware of
Well, there's
and not
quite a
share
few
with the
things. And I mean, if
regulars?
I just, tell you, so there is this change to this statutory code of practice around fire and rehire. So you remember the P&O ferries where I don't think that affects SME business, but, that is a change. There's the predictable working hours, which is the 0 hours contract. For hospitality businesses, there's going to be legislation around tips. So you'll have to have a mandatory policy as to how you deal with tips. That's coming in October. There's Neonatal Care and Leave Pay Act. So that'll be a right to 12 weeks neonatal leave. So if, like me, you have babies very early, you will be entitled to extra time while they're in neonatal care. It's going to be up to 12 weeks extra pay. So basically for employers, if somebody's about to go on maternity leave and they do have baby very early, so again it's something to look out for with multiple births, twins, triplets, that's likely to happen, then they've got a right to 12 extra weeks of leave. There's prevention around, there's extra sort of things in the Equality Act. There's a prevention of sexual harassment of employees. So again, that's coming in October. So as an employer, you need to think about what is the risk. So if you have got, so I was talking to one of my clients who's a charity earlier, and they've got people going out and dealing with vulnerable adults. So some of their employees might be at greater risk of sexual harassment. So what do they need to do? They need to have a policy. They need to know, what they're going to do. They need to have stuff in their interactions with the people that use their service about their rules and regulations and what they will do. I think this will be big for hospitality businesses, where you've got people working in bars and restaurants. And that's coming in October, so you'll need to have thought of that and put something in place. There's some changes to the way in which grievances will work. There is talk that sick pay, the 3 qualifying days, so if you're off sick and you get statutory sick pay, you don't get any SSP for the first 3 days. Talk that will change and the SSP will come in from day 1. So that's something that you will, as an employer, you'll have to be aware of. Potentially makes, return to work interviews and sickness policies with triggers and Bradford factor, that sort of thing. Might want to look at that and tighten that up. There's changes to the way in which redundancy consultations need to happen. Again, we talked about changes to minimum wage and potentially the removal of the banding right the way down to 16 and 17-year-olds. So, I talked about that 1144 being applicable to 21-year-olds. Could be that it will now be applicable to 18-year-olds and possibly even 16 and 17-year-olds. So then you'll have people like my sons who are 21 saying, well, hang on a minute, how come a 16-year-old's getting paid the same as me? Yeah, which is that thing that we spoke about. And the big one, of course, is removal of the time limit for unfair dismissal claims. So at the moment, unless you have a protected characteristic, you cannot bring a claim of unfair dismissal until you've worked for somebody for 2 years. They are saying this is going to be a day 1 right. So to my mind, as an employer, what you need to be looking at is, do you have probation periods? How long are they? How good are you at monitoring and managing those probation periods? And that, I think, takes us right back to the beginning of when you are recruiting. What are you looking for? What does the onboarding look like? What does a probation period look like? Can your managers manage probation periods? Because this is going to be key for you. No longer can you put somebody in, see if they sink or swim, and then if it's not working, say it's not working. So I think, 2 of the big things I think is definitely 0 hours contracts if you have people working like that. But this is, this will affect everybody. everybody who employs someone. This is going to affect. And then there'll be changes, some changes to parental leave, an introduction of this right to disconnect, which they already have in Europe, in France. So for me, that's interesting, because my partner has worked in a job where you don't have a company mobile phone, and they take your mobile number and they put you in a WhatsApp group. So when he's not working, messages are going into the WhatsApp group, and his phone is pinging and pinging and pinging. When we're away on holiday, his phone is pinging and pinging and pinging. Now, if he wants to exercise his right to disconnect, how,
So, as far as I can tell, as I can tell, there's a lot of changes, Sarah. Yeah, very much so. Well, Sarah, I've got to say thank you. Thank you so much. And to all our listeners out there, I hope you've enjoyed and found what we've talked about really interesting. But if you do want to find out any more, then please contact Sarah. All the details will be below on the podcast. But thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. Bye.